morning. Good morning. My name is Sheila Flitch, and I'm one of Dan's sisters-in-law. Welcome, and thank you for being here today. Today we honor, celebrate, and remember the extraordinary Daniel Wilson. The burden of grief may be lightened, even if only for a short time, by shared experience and reflection. Your presence today is a gift and a meaningful show of love and support to Sandy, Victoria, and all the family. I've selected 2 poems that I'd like to share with you today. The first reminds me of what a truly remarkable man Dan was. He was gifted with a fierce intelligence, deep curiosity, and the determination to see a job well done. Dan dedicated himself to essential and oftentimes difficult work. He had a psychiatrist's unique ability to assess the human factor and an administrator's touch to make change happen. This is To Be of Use by Marge Piercy. The people I love best jump into work head first, without dallying in the shallows, and swim off with sure strokes, almost out of sight. They seem to become natives of that element, the black heads of sleek seals bounding like half-submerged balls. I love people who harness themselves, an ox to a heavy cart, who pull like water buffalo with massive patience, who strain in the mud and the muck to move things forward, who do what has to be done again and again. I want to be with people who submerge in the task, who go into the fields to harvest and work in a row and pass the bags along, who are not parlor generals or field deserters. We move in a common rhythm when the food must come in, or the fire be put out. The work of the world is common as mud, botched, it smears the hands, crumbles to dust. But the thing worth doing well done has a shape that satisfies, clean and evident. Greek amphoras for wine or oil, open vases that held corn are put in museums. But you know they were meant to be used. The picture cries for water to carry, and a person for work that is real. The next reading acknowledges the void Dan's absence leaves in our hearts and our lives, and it hints toward healing in the days ahead. This is When Great Trees Fall by Maya Angelou. When great trees fall, rocks on distant hills shudder. Lions hunker down in tall grasses, and even elephants lumber after safety. When great trees fall in forests, small things recoil into silence, their senses eroded by fear. When great souls die, the air around us becomes light, rare, sterile. We breathe briefly, our eyes briefly see with a hurtful clarity. Our memory, suddenly sharpened, examines, nods on kind words unsaid, promised walks never taken. Great souls die, and our reality, bound to them, takes leave of us. Our souls, dependent on their nurture, now shrink, wisen. Our minds, formed and informed by their radiance, fall away. We are not so much maddened as reduced to the unutterable ignorance of dark, cold caves. And when great souls die, after a period, peace blooms, slowly and always irregularly. Spaces fill with a kind of soothing electric vibration. Our senses, restored, never to be the same again, whisper to us, they existed, they existed. We can be and be better, for Dan existed. I now invite Victoria to come tell us about her dear Papa.
Thank you all for your support today. And while I wish it were a happier occasion, I know my dad would be touched at the presence of each and every one of you. I saw a video interview a few months ago that I dearly wish I could have shown my dad. It was Neil deGrasse Tyson, a famous American physicist, and he responded to the question, who do you think is the most extraordinary scientific mind that humanity has produced? Take a moment, think. Who comes to mind? Dad was always interested in what immediately came to the forefront of the psyche. Well, personally, I'd love to answer my dad, and while brilliant, he didn't play the role of supreme scientific discoverer for humanity. deGrasse makes a strong argument, and I will summarize his interview. He vehemently responded, "There is no contest. Sir Isaac Newton. Nothing, nobody comes close." deGrasse continues, "Newton, working alone, discovers the laws of motion. Then he discovers the law of gravity, the universal law of gravitation. Then someone asks, why do our planets orbit in an ellipses, an oval, rather than a perfect circle? And Newton goes, I'm gonna have to get back to you on that. And he goes home and finds his answer. He simply had to invent integral and differential calculus first. Don't ask me the difference, I passed one, and I don't remember which. Isaac then discovers the laws of optics, correctly deducing that white light is composed of colors. Weird, right? You can take red to violet to make white light, which freaked out artists of the day, and it kind of freaks me out. And then Isaac Newton turned 26. So, by my dad's 26th birthday, he had more extraordinary experiences than most people undergo in a lifetime. A chaotic, but intellectual and interesting family, a deep and enduring love for my mother, which never wavered. Hitchhiking from Iowa to Mexico City at the age of 15, Yale, a certain bona fide society at school. So 26 was probably a bit of a blur, but it continued. Life rolls on. The first law of motion. A body remains at rest or in motion at a constant speed in a straight line unless it is acted upon by force. Then he just kept going. His life remained full throttle. He started residency where he occasionally clocked 126 out of 168 hours a week in the hospital. And he had a child. He lived and studied abroad. He enjoyed a stint in charge of a 700-bed state-funded mental health hospital. He helped patients with depression to schizophrenia to lycanthropy. The man genuinely thought he was a werewolf. He was a pioneer of forensic psychiatry. He practiced in the Midwest, across the US, and even abroad for the military in Germany. Some of his colleagues were murdered. Some died. He lost some dear friends who took their own life. He dealt with death and bickering within our own family. I became a teenager. He ventured on worldwide travels, sometimes with my mom and I, and sometimes alone, from India to South Africa, to Sicily, to Australia, to Venezuela. I remember when he got his yellow fever vaccine, and he was sick as a dog 2 weeks later. Still get your vaccines, but that one does take you out. And then he and my mom visited me in Scotland and in London, and then in Northern Ireland, where I was in medical school. His soul moved like a feather on the breath of God. He gleaned all he could from life, and then he managed to discover more. For me, he was all intents and purposes my Isaac Newton. Motion. Dad, the North Star, fixed and true, yet he was flexible and blessed with both the scientific and artistic mind. He helped teach me to walk. He taught me to ride a bike. I can still feel the breeze and his hug of encouragement on North Clippington Drive in Cincy as he let me go and I flew without training wheels for the first time, joyous and free. When I stumbled in adolescence or medical school, he overcame my inertia and helped me march forward. We all have a path, and he taught and helped guide me on my own. Gravity. Everything falls eventually, our physical bodies most definitely, but our spirits, our drive, our will. He taught me that you can defy gravity. You pick yourself up off the ground. Physically, you dust yourself off after falling from your bike or a horse, or from the clouds of a dream. You recover after you fail at a task or a goal or an action. You remain in motion. Dreams and goals are ethereal. You may fail physically, but you try again. That is success. Gravity is inevitable, but we don't have to succumb. Optics. Well, his optics became more narrow with time. I know my dad helped me to see the world from an array of perspectives. We traveled. He taught me Latin, how to tool leather, to thirst for knowledge and eke out unique experiences, to never stop exploring or asking why. He encouraged me to understand different perspectives, religions, backgrounds, cultures, even mental states. He felt privileged to vicariously experience his patients' exceptional and volatile lives, feeling he had lived 1,000 lifetimes in one, a kaleidoscope of man's existence. While we may not always have seen eye to eye, he is the one who revealed to me the prism of our world's view. Dad is my Isaac Newton, and I miss him every day. I'm angry and baffled that such a remarkably effervescent fire has been snuffed out, but he lives on in each of us. He wants motion and gravity and optics for each of you. He reveled in your victories, and he lamented your struggles. And I love you, Papa, and we shall all march on with the comfort of your memory wrapped around the shoulder of our doubts. And next will be his brother Ned, and Uncle Ned.
Ned Wilson, and brother, one of his four brothers. There was never a time in my memory when there wasn't a pain. He made his arrival on George Washington's birthday when I was just 19 months old. We grew up together, spent a lot of time together. I like to call him my baby brother, but it was more my peer. Sometimes my model to follow. You can't encapsulate a life like Dan's, but a couple of memories show that he had in his childhood the roots that grew up to the big life he had. This was a story related to me later by somebody else, but I was always good at school, and I played well with others. Radine's here and her aunt Elizabeth Stoltzfus were two of our favorite teachers. When I was in Mrs. Stoltzfus' 5th grade class, she told Mrs. Zare, "Oh, Ned's such a joy in class. He's curious, he's helpful, he's hardworking, he's friendly." And Mrs. Zare responded, "Just wait till you get married." Well, he was every bit as smart as me, and I others. He played well with others, understood them, and led them. I suspect Mike, the next speaker, will say some of the things he led them into. Did I mention that Dan was born on Washington's birthday? I think that fact contributed to his lifelong interest in politics. Politics and medicine aren't some things that usually are associated closely, but there were for Dan. Those were foundational. During the 1964 presidential election campaign, we kept up by reading the papers, watching the news, and discussing the issues in our juvenile way. One evening, we were in front of the fireplace, reading the paper, and Dad was in the recliner reading his paper. And Dan said, "Dad, when I grow up, I want to be the President of the United States." 8 years old. Dad, some of you knew it, cleared his throat, stood up, folded his paper, put it under his arm, bent down to Dan's level and said, "Dan, you can do that after you finish medical school." Dan never became President of the United States, but I was still able to congratulate him with the title of Mr. President when he took the reins at Western University of Health Science. Dan's passing leave an emptiness in our hearts, in our lives. But there's emptiness in Winterfield. And memories and love been fertilized Winterfield's growth in the future. I regret it. Coming up.
Yeah, I'm Mike McGregor, and I am a childhood friend of Dan's. Before Dan was, as renowned and as accomplished and as conquered the world, he was a kid in Manson, Iowa. And I was a kid right along with him. I met Dan in kindergarten, and we just hit it off. I loved going over to the Wilson household. There was always a lot of energy there, creativity, and it was close to the school, so it was just an easy jaunt over there, pretty much every day. There was just always something going on. The house was full of kids, and it was just kind of, like I said, a creative energy that was real. As I said, the house was full of kids, and I just remember, maybe some of you heard this too, but when Vi would come to the bottom of the stairs and go, "And have Chip Jim Tom that Dan Nancy?" It was unforgettable. We just had a lot of experiences, and as time went on, one that came to mind when I was just thinking about just all of the stories, I guess. That's really what I've been relating to, or just events that happened. One time we were walking over to my parents' house, and we found a turtle that was near a drainage ditch. And anyway, we took him into my house, and I talked my mom out of using her plastic dish pan to corral this turtle. And anyway, it just took him to school, show and tell, and it was just always fun to just kind of share things with everyone at school. And I think at Manson, I'm glad you mentioned those two teachers, but I particularly remember Mrs. Stolzfus as just a wonderful, wonderful teacher. But we took our turtle to school, and anyway, that was all good. But the next day, we were going. He stayed over at our house in the Odyssey fish pan, but he was gone. Turtle was gone, and it was like, where did he go? Where did he go? And anyway, we couldn't quite figure it out. A little bit later, I noticed my dog in the corner of the yard, and he was chewing on something. Anyway, it happened to be our turtle. And he had by this time he had a broken shell. And we lobbied to take him to the veterinarian. Then if you remember Doc Howie, he probably would have broken. So anyway, my mom, assured us that the turtle would be fine if we, let him go back into the ditch, or back in those days and growing up here at that time, what we referred to as the creek. So, anyway, we released him back down there, and that was the end of that. Like I said, Mom said, "Oh, he'll be just fine." So anyway, we just hung out together a lot, and in doing that, one of the things that we had ideas. I mean, we had ideas, and anyway, one of the first things we really decided that was going to be something that we wanted, that we were going to do would be to camp out, and we camped out. Ned, you were part of that too, and the camp outs, as we got a little bit older, that was just kind of code for how are we going to torment the town council. And we created, new ways to utilize the fireworks that we secured during the year, and to use little, I steal cigarettes from my dad's drugstore and use those as timers. And you get the cigarette going and then plug it onto the fuse. You could go, the town cop in Manson used to just sit up right here. And you can see down the alley and put it there. Get out of there. And then just, strategically place them here or there and just get it going. Send him on a wild goose chase. Our town cop was more Barney Fife, if you're familiar with Mayberry, and that was, it was great fun. We just love to do that. And together, we love to laugh. I mean, we just love to laugh. And one of the things that I remember, from going over to the Wilson house all the time was that they had a good stash of Mad Magazine. And Mad Magazine, for those of you who are maybe our age, it was funny. And my dad had the drugstore, and so we had, kind of the new stuff coming in all the time. And then my oldest brother, he had a nice stash of classic Mad Magazine. So anyway, it was just something that was, just part of who we were growing up. That kind of morphed in later years into a comic book magazine that was called The Fabulous Furry Freak Brothers. And one of the characters in that was a guy named Oak Willie. And that became Dan's nickname for a while. And it was just great fun. Camping out was, it was an adventure. One of the first camp outs that we had that, was beyond our, one of our backyards. We decided, we got clearance from our parents to camp out in the wilds behind the bus barn. And we were there. And we camped out there. It was on the edge of town. And I don't know, we were maybe in about 4th, 5th grade, somewhere in there. And, at that time, it was like, oh, we're going to camp out behind the bus barn. Well, we made the mistake of Ned's and Dan's, one of his older brothers was Tom. And Tom, and as I recall, Danny Shea, they came down and raided Barnes. They just scared us to death. And it was just part of growing up here. After that, we really kept our campsite secret. The bus barn, behind the bus barn was really kind of a favorite spot. You know, my speech, you know, maybe I should talk about this, maybe I shouldn't, but it was part of growing up. You know, we got to the point we were in about junior high, and, you know, we had to get some beer. So anyway, I had some connections. Everybody knew Schumann. Schumann was a pool hall in town, and you could get what you needed at Schumann. I hooked us up with some, I don't know, I think somebody else was there too. I don't recall, but there were at least 3 of us. And I got a 6-pack for everybody of tall boy Schlitz. And tall boy Schlitz, a 6-pack of those on a 110-pound body. It did some damage. We just had great fun. You know, as junior high and high school came into play, our lives became more and more, they revolved around sports. And Dan was a good athlete. You know, he was a track and football guy, and we loved to play. All of our friends played, and we were, you know, generally we were good. I mean, we just were. But one of Dan's main contributions that he made to athletics and just kind of what was cool in and around athletics, but Dan was the first one to secure, I think it was a pair of Adidas. But that was back when that was really unusual. I mean, you just, you know, nobody had, you know, athletic shoes the way that they do now. I mean, they were just canvas tennis shoes and whatnot. But Dan got us hooked up. There was a place down in Des Moines called Vic Young Sporting Goods, is that what they call it. And anyway, that was just fun stuff. Dan, one of the things that, you know, he was good at everything, but one of the things that he probably wasn't particularly good at was authority. And he had, in junior high, we had this old school that was just right over here. I mean, our elementary school was brand new. Junior high was like built in 1895, and then the high school was new that we went to. But anyway, in our junior high, we had a study hall. And the study hall was just this big open room and, you know, full of, you know, kids that were, you know, 7th, 8th grade, maybe some freshmen, you know, nice age, right? I mean, everybody was just in there trying to do whatever and make one another laugh. Well, Dan had a find at the library. And the library was just up in the front of the junior high, and I mean, it had ballooned to, like, it was over 30 cents. When it got that high, I think they posted your name on the and the guy who was in charge of the study hall, he and Dan just didn't see eye to eye. So anyway, finally, I don't know what, I think maybe they took Dan had by this guy who happened to be a coach in none of the sports that Dan participated in. But they butted heads. So anyway, the fine had ballooned to over 30 cents. I think he lost his library privileges. And finally, one day, Dan walked up to the front of the study hall, to the library desk, and it was like he was going to pay his fine. And say it was 33 cents or whatever it was. Well, Dan pulls his money out of his pocket, and he just goes. That was followed by Wilson, study office. And but it was funny. It was legendary. He was a hero. You know, fast forward, we graduated from high school, went our separate ways. But one thing that I distinctly remember was about 20 months ago, you know, I got a text message from him. He said, "Hey, are you available for a call?" And at that time, he revealed to me, you know, his illness, and you know, it didn't sound good. And I just said immediately, "Are you up for visitors?" And he said, "Yeah." And anyway, probably about 6-8 weeks later, I traveled out to California to Dan and Sandy. And I guess the thing that I remember the most about them is we just sat and talked for hours. I loved being able to just sit and ask Dan a question on just about anything, and then sitting there and just letting him go on in depth. And he just gave me the best, the best explanations you could ever get. And he could do it on just about any subject. It's like being in the best lecture you've ever been, but it was wonderful. He had a collection of wine that was unlike anything I'd ever seen. So anyway, rather than guzzling Schlitz behind the bus, fine French wine. And we, the last night I was there, we went to one of Dan and Sandy's favorite restaurants. I think Tori, maybe you found it, Nuno's. And it was, I guess, not only, I just had a great time and a great meal, but everybody there treated me like family. And it was just indicative of, his greater life. I mean, he just touched people in that way. I'm just grateful for having had the opportunity to know Dan and call him my friend, and honored to be able to share you some of these memories. The one thing that he said, when maybe I left, was, he said, I can't help but tell you that I'm a little curious as to what's on the other side. So anyway, Dan, we miss you, we love you, look forward to seeing you again. And now, Jack Moses, from a friend of his from Yale. So, thank you.
Thank you all for joining in this celebration of Dan's life. We're here today to remember his life in the gifts of our friend, husband, father, brother, uncle, colleague, and truly incredible, if somewhat inscrutable, and sometimes scurrilous man, Dan Wilson. He should have the MD PhD. He was proud of that, as he should be. His accomplishments in life, academic, professional, and personal, are breathtaking. Our friend, Eric Peters, recently asked me, when did he sleep? An incredible intellect and jokester, Dan has been my dear friend since our introduction at Yale in 1978, where we shared an important extracurricular association through which I was able to spend probably 10 to 15 hours a week with Dan. We bonded initially, I think, because we shared common backgrounds. Both came from small towns filled with good, humble people, many in this room today. We attended public schools and we played sports. I also appreciated Dan's sense of humor. Early in our friendship, he shared with me a joke about a young Iowa adolescent growing up in a pig farm with the punchline, "Honest, Dad, it backed up into me." Was that you? Still brings a smile on my face. In 1984, Dan sent me a message with the Latin phrase, "Nil udum est." He wouldn't be surprised to learn that it wasn't until recently that I just understood what that phrase meant, and loosely translated, it means, of the dead, speak nothing but good. And in Dan's case, there's no risk. He was a gentle, kind, and thoughtful person, And by the way, I want to tell you, the way he got that message to me was on an official legal script from Mount Auburn Hospital in Cambridge, Mass., signed by Dr. Dan, always a jokester. We stayed in touch in the 80s and 90s as we could by phone, and an occasional letter, and Dan was always better at that than I was. We visited too, and I remember seeing Dan and Sandy in Cambridge. And at that time, Dan was excited to tell me about his, and a previous speaker talked about it. He started collecting his red wine, and he assured me that even though it was inexpensive now, it was going to be wonderful, and we would have it later in life with some cigars. And if any of you have been to the Wilsons lately, you know that he was right. He was a connoisseur not only of wine, but of many, many things. His capacity to learn was seemingly boundless, and I'm sure all of us have at some point witnessed the bright glow of his intellect. My personal experience, I've known some who use the gift of intellect and knowledge to wear others down or to bowl them over. I never saw that with Dan, ever. He had a genuine interest in what others had to say and listened patiently to viewpoints that didn't always jive with his. Sometimes he would provoke you. Our mutual friend Steve Scroban has been one of the recipients of Dan's provocations. But Dan himself was always seemed to be calm, attentive, and engaging in conversation. Moving on to the new millennium, it was easier for us to stay in touch via email, and Dan made good use of email. I counted exactly 1,280 emails sent to me since 2000. That's about one a week for 25 years. Dan was prolific. You might be interested to know that some of the subjects of those emails were Lewinsky. Yeah, Lewinsky. 2 doctors opened offices in a small town. 19 things that took me 50 years to learn. To my dear wife, it wasn't as romantic as it sounds, believe me. Rare historical photos. He liked photos and was, in fact, a great photographer. Bill and Hillary's new place. A good pun has its own reward. And as you know, Dan awards. Mardi Gras. He sent that to me twice. And learn Korean in 5 minutes. And you can imagine some of these emails weren't the most politically correct, and that was okay. Dan was unabashedly politically incorrect, I am too. And so it was a good thing. Another innovation that Dan made use of, caller ID. Many times when I call him, maybe it's happened to you, to answer the phone with a faux, pretentious, yes, what is it? And I'd start laughing, and he'd start cackling in that Dan style, you know, with his mouth closed. I love those calls. I love this laugh. Over the last decade or so, with the Wilsons moved to California, my wife and I had more opportunities to visit with Dan and Sandy and Victoria in person. And they joined us in Montana as well. In 2024, Dan and I, along with other friends, attended our 45th college reunion in New Haven. And at that time, Dan had already been diagnosed. He shared with me that he understood the likely outcome of his situation, and that he was at peace with that. And it wasn't just bravado. He faced this challenge with an inspiring courage and a firm belief that we would see each other again. It was really quite something to watch. I wanted to share with you a note that I wrote to Dan, read to him by Sandy on the eve of his passing. My dear friend Dan, when we met in 1978, I knew we'd be good buds, but I didn't realize at that time how much you would enrich my life. I'm forever grateful for every moment we've spent together on High Street, in New Haven, Boston, Iowa, California, Montana. You're my very dearest pal, and I love you with all my heart. I am so lucky, we are so lucky. You have my word that I will watch over your lovelies, Sandra and Tori. We will see each other again, converse deeply, hug manly, bust balls, and generally misbehave. Whomever you see next, remember that honest it backed into me is an incredible excuse for an island. And this is going to be cryptic, but you just have to accept it. Truly, you are the Rex Boni, and the goddess smiles upon you. You are in my daily thoughts and prayers now and forever. Much love, Vega D177. My name's Jack Moses, and I'm grateful to have met Dan in 1978 and his friend since. And I wanted to invite up Dr. Abernathy, University of Iowa School of Medicine.
Well, I was Dan's psychiatrist. I'm no stranger to public speaking. I've given lectures to auditoriums of neurosurgeons, listening meetings. Difficult presentation I'll make. If I cry like a little girl, it's because I have something in my eye. Now, we're all aware of Dan's intelligence, his wit, humor, loyalty, friendship, dedication, conservative views, love of country, spirituality. I'm not here to talk about any of that. I'm here to reminisce about his time in medical school. Medical school is a unique time. It's a transition point. We met the first day of orientation at the University of Iowa Medical School. He sat in the back row. I was a farmer's son, he was the son of a doctor. How suspicious already. I had shoulder-length, sun-bleached blonde hair with a white tank top, crew-cut blue jeans, and yellow boots. Dan was wearing khakis, a polo shirt, and boat shoes. I immediately took a dislike to this East Coast Ivy League liberal. Then we shook hands. Dan was always proud of his handshake. He considered a strong, firm handshake to be the first assessment of a man's worth. You all know this. He had his father's forearms that could crush an unopened can of spinach. The harder he squeezed, the more I squeezed back. Gained dominance over this liberal. It was a draw. And so we quickly became friends, for no apparent reason. Well, Dan and Sandy lived in married student housing, while Serena and I lived in a trailer court on the edge of town. We learned a great deal from each other during that time. Dan taught me how to swing a golf club, which fostered a lifelong love of avoiding golf. He introduced me to prepackaged food because he lived off of Kraft macaroni and cheese and hot dogs. He taught me how to tie a tie. This time. Pierre Cardin, circa 1980. For my part, I taught Dan how to unclasp a woman's bra with the snap of the finger. You know what I'm talking about. Dan and I would speak on the phone for 3 to much to the chagrin of our wives. We discuss politics, education, religion, music, cosmic meaning, all sorts of psychosocial issues. If only we had a podcast. Dan and Sandy were there when I proposed to Serena at the Lark Supper Club, April 1st, 1981, which was also Sandy's birthday. It was the first time and last time I ever ate frog legs. Dan was a groomsman and Sandy was a bridesmaid or wedding. Fun fact, Dan was our reception wedding planner. Sitting there with me. Dan and I had 2 rules. Real men do not dance, and real men do not shake like this. And at Dan's behest, we had a pool party at the Cliff House Motel in Decorah, Iowa. The men were instructed to wear Hawaiian shirts, swim trunks, and sandals. The women were asked to wear bikinis, of course. Instead of stuffing a garter with dollar bills, the bridesmaids wore cigarette girl outfits and sold cigars, belly down, and candy to fund our honeymoon. Best reception ever. Incidentally, during medical school, we actually received an education. Dan and I were those guys, in your class who may or may not attend lectures. Typically would review the material the night before, take the test cold. I recall a public health class that neither of us attended. At least I bought the book. The night before the final at 10 a.m., Dan calls me and asks, what do you think is going to be on this test tomorrow? It's been a whole semester. I had read the book earlier in the day, and I told him what I believed were the salient points. The next day, we took the test. I missed one question. I had second highest score in class. Dan didn't miss any. Never let me forget that. I literally, in the past year, I would have heard him say, remember that public health class? Our senior year in medical school was spent at the Oakdale Alcohol Treatment Campus. We lived in duplexes there. At that time, anyone who was arrested for multiple offense, public intoxication, or drunk driving was sent to this campus for alcohol treatment. To save physician manpower, the university would choose 3 senior medical students to staff the facility. It meant taking call every 3rd night and performing admission histories and physicals in exchange for free housing, utilities, tuition. It was a good deal for us. We were chosen based upon academic prowess and financial need. And of course, Dan submitted my name along with his. I was unaware of this until we received confirmation. It was a fantastic year that cemented our lifelong friendship. One of my favorite memories of that time was meeting Sandy's lovely mother, June. You see, we were growing zucchini in our garden. And on a Saturday morning, I dropped by Dan and Sandy's duplex with a large zucchini stuffed down my pant leg. I threw open the door and yelled, "Hey, Sandy, I have something for you." To my surprise, Mother June was standing just in front. Off to the side, Dan quickly commented, "This is our good friend. It appears he's happy to meet you today." Medical school must have been unfulfilling for us because we were always looking for something to occupy our time. The most outrageous brainstorm that we came up with was applying to the Palmer School of Chiropractic Medicine, even though we were attending medical school. We sent applications under the aliases of Lance White and Tom Sable. We were invited to the school for a tour and interview. Dan and I drove to the school and had a wonderful day of role playing as undergraduate students anxiously awaiting an invitation to achieve our lifelong goals of obtaining a chiropractic degree. When we finished putting our best foot forward, we were eagerly accepted to the class of 1983. We departed promising to send our registration down payment next week. Medical school with Dan was 4 years of friendship, joy, and inspiration. Sadly, all good things come to an end. In June of 1983, we loaded up our U-Hauls, literally loaded U-Hauls, and went off on our new separate adventures. We continued our relationship to a different level as God parents each other's children's. Occasional vacation visits, but over the years, Dan and I continued our in-depth phone calls. He may have left this plane of existence, but I assure you we still talk. Final note. During the prime of our youth, and even at that point, Dan would contemplate the end of life. One late evening on the patio under the stars, Dan and I are drinking wine, smoking cigars, and discussing the profound mysteries of this life. Dan leaned back in his chair and sincerely said, unquote, "When my time comes, I just want to be fat, dumb, and happy." 2 out of 3 ain't bad.
Is my name. I'm a friend of Tori and Sandy Wilson, and I'm really privileged to have the opportunity. Thank you, Sandy, and thank you, Tori. I'm really pleased and privileged to have the opportunity to say a few remarks, albeit by video, today regarding my long-standing colleague and friend Dan. In 1994, Dale Stenson, who served as the medical director for the entire Ohio Department of Mental Health. Dale said to me, as I was a new medical director in one of the hospitals, Dale said to me, "You should get to know a guy who's in your position similarly at Cincinnati. I think you'd get on well together." Well, what a mistake did Dale make. Because Dan and I tortured Dale with our combined wit over the time that we both served as medical director. But what a great joy and what a great gift Dale gave me in a first introduction to my long-standing colleague and friend Dan. And Dan and I essentially followed similar career paths all across our time together. Dan did an amazing job at the Cincinnati State Hospital through incredible collaboration with the University of Cincinnati Department of Psychiatry, and he really turned over into a high-quality public mental institution, that institution. Having done that, he then took the position of chair of psychiatry at Creighton Department of Psychiatry at their university. He did another spectacular job there, grew the clinical service, improved the education, and really kick-started research where it did not exist. He then took a dean's job and running the campus, the regional campus for University of Florida's School of Medicine in Jacksonville, and again, did just an amazing job. And then he ended up in California at a presidential role. And in a way, Dan was always destined to be president. And I personally took great joy in his friendship, but also in watching both his career, but also the amazing things that he did. Dan was a tremendous academic. He was fiercely inquisitive. He read voraciously and also very much up to date. A great raconteur, fun person to be around, and really generous like an academic, of junior colleagues, of mentoring others, and of others having the limelight. So although he had a spectacular career, but he was always, in spite of the demands of his career, in spite of being in the limelight, Dan was always grounded by the love of his life, Sandy. They had an extraordinary lifelong friendship and love for each other. And Tori was the love of the apple of his eye, as they say. And he was very proud of her and very proud of the trajectory that she's on in her career and her life. So Dan, I learned so much about life from Dan. I miss him. He's a wonderful individual. He gave so much to life. And then also, in the last moments of his life, just like he had shepherded and given me advice and taught me about life, he taught me also about the dignity of passing away and the great human resilience. He was beautiful throughout all his life, and he was beautiful as an individual as he faced the challenges of his latter stages of his life. And perhaps some of the best, most meaningful conversations I had with Dan were not at the beginning when we had fun ribbing Dale Svensson, but rather at the end when he taught me again more about life. I'm grateful to him. You know, as I think about it, Dan always was bemused by the fact that I was an Irish doctor coming to America, and he was bemused by my Irish lilt. And he probably is looking down at us and wondering, oh no, Peter, don't do this, because I'm going to end up with some beautiful Irish phrase for Dan, and that is, Yesh Day Anam, may Dan sit at the right hand of God. Thank you for the privilege to be with you today.
Hello, all you wonderful people in Manson, Iowa. My name is Jerry Finicuro, and I am a friend of the Wilson family. Hi, ladies. How are you? Old man, so great to see you. Sandy, Tori, wish I was there. Logistics do not allow me to be there with you all, but I wanted to send a video message anyway. I know the wonderful Wilson family through being Tori's Spanish teacher in Omaha, Nebraska some time ago. And wow, ever since then, I've kind of kept up with Dan. And in November of last year, Dan and I were talking, he told me of his terminal situation. And it was a surreal thing, as it was for all of us, this news. And Dan asked me something, being kind of an old podcast, video production guy. He said, would you mind chronicling some of the events and stories of my life? And doing a series of interviews, and he was going to tell me of some of those things that were near and dear to him, so he had kind of an oral history of his life. And I said, well, absolutely. So Dan and I started on this wonderful project where we would talk sometimes once, a couple times a week, and there's a piece of Zoom software that allowed us to do that. Riverside FM is what it's called. And in that time, we had visual contact with each other, but I was able to record the audio and download it, and it would transcribe the audio. And those since then have been passed on, of course, to Tori and Sandy. And we started out a project of just, let's see if we can kind of get down the story. It became a project of about 5 months long, from November up until the spring. And just up until a few weeks before Dan's departure. And I want to tell you something. You all are all gathered there and you're celebrating this man's life. And he told me about all of you. And some of you have an awful lot to hide. Kidding aside, I gotta tell you, I can't tell you how many hours, 30 hours, maybe more, of conversations about growing up, about school, about the neighborhood, about family, about summer jobs, about all kinds of stuff, college, about the places where the family lived and where the Wilsons were on assignment in different cities and different travels to different places. And we talked about everything. And it was a fascinating story. And here's what I want to leave you all with. I got to hear about all of you, and you are all sharing stories about Dan's wonderful life and his contribution to all of you on a very personal level. And I want to tell you all something. Everybody gathered there today, and many people who were not there, Dan talked about you and the contribution that you made to his life. And it was amazing. No friendship was ever undervalued. They were all very cherished. Dan spent so much time talking about other people and the wonderful camaraderies and friendships that you all had and what that meant to him and family and events. And, you know, it wasn't all misty watercolor memories of, you know, whatever. I mean, it was, some of it was kind of gritty. But he told me so many things about what made Dan Dan and what made his life so wonderful. And it's all you. So I want you to know that he loved all of you, and you all made an enormous impact on his life. And I'll tell you, I'll leave you with this one thing. I could talk for an hour about the wonderful things that Dan shared. This was a guy with a 34-page CV. I am not joking. And I asked him, I said, Dan, of all the things that you've accomplished in your life, personally, professionally, and everything else, is there anything that stands out as being a superlative, top of that list? And he said, yeah, there are two things. He said, and not in this order. He said, number one, I scored 17 unassisted, or I made 17 unassisted tackles my senior year on the football team in high school. And he said, the second one, I married Sandy. And that was the most important decision he ever made. Because, how many times did he tell me how proud he is, and I mean is, of both you, Sandy, and you, Tori. What a beautiful testimonial. But on behalf of Dan, I'm going to tell you, what a beautiful gift you all gave to him, because you did. God bless you all.
Thank you all for being here today. What an enlightening shared experience and reflection we've just had. The family will now exit first. You may greet and offer condolences in the lobby. And then please proceed to the Manson Event Center for a function immediately to follow.